All right, it's 1 minute after the hour. I guess that's the normal time that we get started. So welcome everyone to the March 2019 edition of the OpenZFS leadership meeting. I would say we have a pretty light agenda this week, so maybe we'll have a short meeting. But in my experience,
why would you say that?
It's like you're going to run over. So we're probably going to have a long meeting anyways. I think I go through the agenda. I thought Sarah, oh, here comes Seraphim. All right, I put him first on the agenda, and he's 2 minutes late. He's 1 minute and 30 seconds late. Man, you're up. Seraphim wanted to mention the log spacemap review.
Hey guys, I just wanted to give a quick note that a PR that I had on the ZFS on Linux repo that was in progress is actually open now, and it will have all the performance results, which are more or less the same of what we've seen in Illumos, around like 40% improvements in random writes for very fragmented pools. And also for people who are interested in porting this work, I know some folks from Illumos have already started this. I've made a list of all the background commits that are needed to port this feature. So yeah, I just wanted to give a heads up. I'm probably going to send an email to the list too to notify more people, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool, thanks. Any questions for Seraphim? All right, then we'll go on to the next item, which was the proposed DRAID summit. Richard.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So a couple of us have been working on DRAID either part-time or full-time for the past year or so. And we're kind of, I think, at the point where it's time for us to get together in a conference room with a whiteboard and hash out some of the various issues around the feature. And so I'm looking for a call of hands to people who might want to meet for a day in, I'm thinking late April or May, to just go over our DRAID and the project, work on that project.
Should we use, do you want to use the hand raise? No, wait, do we have the hand raise stuff?
Do we have the hand raise? I don't know.
Where are you
envisaging
having the thing?
So where to have it? I'm thinking probably the Bay Area is the most convenient. I've got an office area in San Jose that may not be so convenient. San Francisco might be better. If we can get somebody to host a conference room, that'd be great. But the key thing is, you know, who's really interested in that particular project and willing to spend a day on hashing through it.
So DRAID is the distributed parity stuff, right?
Yeah, it's declustered parity.
Yeah, what folks who are interested, if you click on participants, then click on yes. There's like a raise hand, yes, no, go faster, go slower. Like the yes might actually count up the number of people as opposed to the raise hand.
Cool. Well, I don't know if I'll be going personally, but I think we're probably interested to join, so we'll probably try and send somebody, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I figured once I get the right people and get things going, then I'll put together all the logistics and find a venue and like I said, spend a day whiteboarding and designing.
Yeah.
And also catch everybody to where we are as far as testing and so forth. Because we're still pretty far away from having something that's ready to go upstream and be generally available.
Yeah.
So I see me, Josh, Mark maybe, like yes, and I suspect that Brian Bellendorf, Don Brady also, I suspect Bellendorf would also be interested, but he is on a phone where he can't click yes.
Yes, exactly. Definitely add me to that.
Yeah, great. And I also talked to Tim Caputi, and he was interested as well. So, excuse me, Tom Caputi. So, all right, if anybody else has more, then by all means reach out to me.
Cool.
Thank you.
So now I think we'll move on to one of the meatier topics for today, which is the default pool features. So thanks a lot, Josh, for leading that discussion and putting together the proposal that was sent out to the mailing list yesterday. There's some good discussion following that. So I guess why don't we, Josh, why don't you, do you want to kind of summarize the proposal and then gather any more comments or discussion here?
Are you muted?
I don't see him on here actually. Maybe he had, I talked to him about it, but maybe he had a last minute issue. All right, then I will summarize it and we'll make sure that he gets the feedback. So the proposal, I'm gonna bring it up on my screen so I don't miss anything. All right, so the kind of main point of the proposal is that you would be able to optionally specify when you create a pool or when you upgrade a pool that you want to enable only features that are portable. And the definition of portable would be either basically it works on all tier 1 platforms current versions. So that definition would naturally change over time as features were made available on more platforms. Tier 1 platforms, the proposal is that would be a numbered release of FreeBSD, like FreeBSD 11.1 or whatever, a numbered release of ZFS on Linux, so like ZOL 0.7.14, and Illumos doesn't have releases, so it would be the code in Illumos Gate as of 1 year prior. So basically, if the feature's been in Illumos Gate for 1 year, then it would be considered supported by Illumos or portable, for this portable designation. And then in addition to the portable in the current version, there would also be annual portable 2017 that basically says that these are the features that were available on January 1st of 2017 on all the tier 1 platforms. Let me see if there's any. That's the main gist of it. Additionally, we would remember on disk which portable thing you specified last. So if you created the pool with -o features equals portable -2000 whatever, then since that definition never changes, when you run zpool status or zpool upgrade, it would assume that you want to stick with whatever portability definition you gave originally, so it wouldn't prompt you to upgrade. If you said -o features equals portable, which is the current version, then it would only prompt you to upgrade or do the upgrade for you when that definition of portable changes. So in other words, you'd have to upgrade to a newer version of the software, which has a newer definition of the portable, which says that, okay, now as of the time that the software you're running was released, all of the tier 1 platforms supported this feature. Yeah, so that would be remembered on disk so that we could make those changes to the way zpool status and zpool upgrade work. So that was the main part of the proposal. I'll summarize the discussion or the questions that were raised on the mailing list since yesterday. There was a request to be able to basically define the feature, the feature sets at runtime, like in a configuration file, so that you could add new definitions on your own. And there was some discussion around that. And I thought there was one more. Oh, there was another discussion about the idea of the tier 1 platform being a ZFS on Linux numbered release, as opposed to a release of a specific distro of like Ubuntu or, whatever. The issue being like if folks are running, if they're running Ubuntu and they upgraded their Ubuntu, then they might necessarily they may not necessarily care about like, yeah, it's great that ZOL supports this, but like Ubuntu doesn't, and I'm using the Ubuntu release. And I think those are the only two. Oh, there's also an issue raised about root pools and the fact that Grub doesn't necessarily support all the features that any of these tier 1 platforms do. So I think that's kind of a summary of the issues that were raised. I'll give quickly my take, and then we'll open it to discussion. So in my opinion, additionally having a list of like user configurable lists of features might or might not be useful. I think that it's not something that we need to include in the core requirements. I think that's something we should continue discussing, but we could start implementation before that discussion concludes and leave that for a future discussion and/or implementation. On the Linux distros, I don't have a strong opinion. I think I would probably ask like which distros are shipping their own versions and kind of how important are they? And on the last issue of Grub, I think that we had previously discussed root pools, like in either on the mailing list or in this meeting a couple months ago, and basically decided that that was like too hard, and we were going to defer that to a future, post initial implementation for handling root pools and Grub. So I'll open up for discussion. I see Sean has a few comments posted in here already. Go ahead.
As I commented in the chat message there, I don't think having the editable file is all that good an idea. Too easy to shoot yourself or make things that aren't actually portable. And the only other thing from looking over Josh's proposal, the only thing that I can think might be useful, and I don't know if it would be in reality, is querying a pool against a compatibility list. This would also be useful for the Bootpool case. Namely, you'd be able to see, is your boot pool compatible with something else?
So are you specifically, I think that part of the proposal was for there to be like essentially pool property that would tell you what you had said, like, oh, I want it to be portable as of 2018 or whatever. But are you saying specifically like with one of those tier 1 platforms, like does this tier 1 platform support this feature?
Well, I think like
no, the other way around, being able to say, how portable is my pool? Zpool check compatibility.
I see.
Right, like
tell you like it's
like what features do I have enabled that are in or not in Portable 2016? So it's an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, I think both ways, like being able to ask, maybe just being able to give like a list of like, okay, you're compatible as of Portable 2019, but if you want Portable 2018, then you don't have that because these additional features are enabled, that sort of thing.
Okay, so apparently it's not just useful in my head. Good.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I also think I think the thing that we probably should resolve at like a design goal level is why we're doing this. And because I think that affects, like, a lot of the questions people are asking about, like, how aggressive should we move the targets forward? And I think the core of the goal seems to be to err on the side of portability rather than currency, on some level, at least, right? At least where a decision has to, because that kind of affects, like, if there is a popular Linux distribution that's lagging behind, would we, you know, I mean, like, if it was RHEL, say, if they were shipping ZFS on Linux in a version that a lot of people are using and it's an older version, would we hold the portable target back? I think it probably is reasonable to do so. Probably. I don't know.
I think it's probably debatable. I mean, I think that's certainly, like, I think that's a valid point of view. I think personally, I would think of it more as from the point of view of most people aren't moving their pools between systems, but they want to maintain the option of being able to do that. And so I was kind of coming at it from a more permissive point of view of having it be more current. So, for example, including you know, the ZOL releases rather than the specific distro releases, because, you know, if you want to open your pool on your Red Hat system, well, even if the version that Red Hat is shipping doesn't support it, you can still install the ZOL, you know, RPMs from the ZOL site. But, like, that opinion is not strongly held, so certainly open to debate on that.
I think it's just, like, I think it, whatever the decision is, I think we should just be clear about it so that when we do have to make decisions, when you have to pick one thing or the other thing, which one is the one that we pick, basically, probably makes sense, I think, to articulate that.
I'm not super current on, like, the Linux distros and what version they're shipping, how far behind they are. Could somebody who's more informed in there kind of give us the lay of the land so that we can take a guess as to whether we would want to include those as tier 1 platforms or not?
Sure, let me take a stab at that. So the answer is they ship all of the versions, I would say. So there are a great many different Linux distros, and they're going to make their own decisions about what to ship, right? We have a stable release, the 07 stuff, that we encourage them to ship, but versions like Arch Linux ship something much newer. Ubuntu ships the 07, which we encourage, and then there's releases like RHEL, which if they package something up and ship with it, you know, they might want it to be unchanged for 5 or 7 years, right? So it's really going to come down to, like, which particular distro you're looking at, which version it's going to ship. So if we could make answering that question real easy about, like, will my pool import with this version of ZFS on this platform, that would be very helpful.
Do you know, like, to what degree is RHEL shipping ZOL?
We provide an external repository for them with the latest ZFS. So they don't ship it as part of their repos. So right now we ship 07 for RHEL.
Right, so
Ubuntu provides their own stuff. Debian provides their own stuff. I think even the Debian releases last a long time too, and they're still providing an 06 version for the older Debian releases.
So I think I would definitely argue that platforms that are not shipping their own version of ZOL, like, they are not tier 1 platforms. So, you know,
yeah,
RHEL would not be in that list, but it sounds like, you know, Ubuntu, Arch, and Debian would be, since they ship their own versions of the on Debian. It sounds like Debian is potentially the one shipping the oldest. Is that on current, whatever the current version of Debian is, they are shipping a 0.6?
No, my understanding is it's the previous stable version of Debian. So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure how long that's supported for still, but
so my proposal for, like, it was for the most recent version. So like, you know, to take FreeBSD as an example, you know, I was proposing that like there is some support, there is a supported version of FreeBSD which supports these features. Therefore, it is portable to FreeBSD. Not that like all supported versions of FreeBSD have to support it, if that makes sense. So, you know, in the case of assuming folks agree with that, then if we carried that to Debian, then it sounds like the most recent version of Debian is shipping like a recent ZOL. So, you know, it might be reasonable to include them as a tier 1 platform.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. They're all going to have their own update cycles too when they pick up the latest thing.
Yeah.
But that's just up to them. I guess a good case in point might be Ubuntu 18.04, which is their current LTS, which is shipping the 07 release. And they will continue. They will not update that, is my understanding, until, you know, they're done with it. So 2023 sometime.
Yeah, but they will ship Ubuntu will ship newer versions of Ubuntu.
Yeah. So you might expect in 2004 them to pick up a new version. Probably not till then.
Well, no, I mean, I think that, well, there will be non-LTS Ubuntu releases in the meantime.
Yeah,
True.
but LTS users do not necessarily upgrade to non-LTS releases. This is kind of the point of an LTS release, that you can stick with it and do not worry about updates.
Do people use anything other than the LTS releases on things that aren't desktops?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm sure people use them, but the LTSs seem to have great traction.
Right. I mean, it makes sense to like that's what I would pick.
I mean, we're using LTS, so
In the Delphic stuff.
yeah.
I think that makes sense.
So given that kind of Ubuntu LTS is what folks care about, and it only comes out with a release every, is it 2 years?
Yeah.
Is that right? You know, would we, I mean, if we made Ubuntu LTS a tier 1 platform, then that would, you know, that would be a significant portability hit, or you know, features, a lot of features would be disabled for a long time because of that. How do folks feel about that trade-off?
I think because we're not making portable the default, I think that's like, I think if you want portability, I think the thing we're talking about reflects the very real trade-off, right? Like, to actually get portability, you need to not enable new features possibly for a couple of years. I mean, that's, you know, and I think, you know, for people that don't need it, they should not enable it probably, and then they should just get the things as they come out. I think makes. I don't know. I think it's kind of over constrained, right? You can't really have it both ways, particularly with like 2-year release cycles for LTS platforms.
Yeah, I think that the fundamental tension is kind of between the view that you outlined and the one that I did, in terms of like the point of view of like, I might want to bring this pool to another operating system, and like I want to bring it to another operating system that is, you know, like the production one, right? Like,
right. Well, for the like
Ubuntu, like of course it would be Ubuntu LTS, because like that's the one that, you know, everybody uses in production,
right.
For example, as opposed to kind of the view that I was pointing out, which is like, oh, I have my pool on Lumos, I want to be able to get to like Linux somehow. And so like, as long as there's some version of Linux that has it, then I'm okay.
For you to be able to use it in the Delphix case, right, where you may be switching backwards and forwards a few times before the eventual transition in one direction. I mean, you're using the, as you said, the LTS version of Ubuntu, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Hey, by the way, Josh has joined the call.
Oh, hey, Josh.
Hey, sorry about that. I had some work stuff blow up at the last minute.
So I kind of summarized the proposal and the items that were discussed on the mailing list. And right now we're talking about kind of what should be a tier 1 platform and why. And the discussion is kind of around is the goal like that there should be some version of Linux/FreeBSD/Illumos that you can bring your pool to, or is it really centered around like the main production version, distro on supports it, supports the features that you would want to bring there.
Right. Is it possible deployment or likely deployment? I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is also rephrased is it more portable or more up to date?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can make the argument, well, you can argue a lot of things about Linux, but you can make a statement and say there's only 2 distros that matter, and that's RHEL and SLES, right? And all we need to worry about is them. And then you go
to ZOL. So therefore, like, we can ignore it. Like, therefore, if you're using ZOL on either of those, you're using the ones that are shipped by the ZOL project, which are the most up-to-date possible. In which case, my proposal is great.
Right. But, I mean, I think the reality is we can, when you talk about Linux distros that people use, you can usually collapse that list down into these are well-supported Linux distros. SLES, RHEL, CentOS, Ubuntu LTS. You could argue a Debian release. And I really think the portable feature should be tied to Linux releases, distro releases that are significant. If you get down into the weeds and start saying, but wait, what about Puppy Dog Linux? And what about, Christian Science Edition Ubuntu? And I mean, you very quickly get to, we need to support all of the releases.
I think the challenge that we're currently up against is that even if we're just talking about Ubuntu LTS, that could be a 2-year lag, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with, but like because I think that's the way that I would lean decision-making wise, but I understand that the other, I mean, it's
I
a
think
choice.
a lot of people run LTS. I mean, I think that if you're going to put portable, I think that's if you're going to put a portable year, 2016 portable, then yes, you are quite a ways off from the latest features. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm hearing some strong arguments for the more conservative view that basically that Ubuntu LTS should be a tier 1 platform, and that's fine. We'll deal with the fact that a lot of features won't be enabled. I mean, my as I said, my opinion is not strongly held. So if somebody doesn't want to argue strongly against the having Ubuntu LTS as a tier 1, then I think we should probably move forward with that.
I think that makes sense just because how common it is, right? It's probably the easiest thing to get going on Linux if you want to use ZFS. I should add, this is probably going to be less of an issue too with the smaller Linuxes because they tend to be more rolling releases. So they're probably rolling something much newer anyway, so it'll just work.
Yeah.
You'll have all the features.
Arch is rolling, right? They pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they might only lag.
The other thing I'd argue is someone who's using a smaller niche Linux release is more likely to be a bit more technically savvy, and they're more likely to want to muck around with the guts of ZFS, and they're going to know what they're doing, and enabling and disabling features manually is not going to be rocket science for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you can install Arch, you're probably able to figure this out.
So let's go ahead and say that Ubuntu LTS will be tier 1, and then I saw the comment about the current what was it that Steve pointed out. The current Ubuntu LTS has 0.75, but Ubuntu LTS 1604 is still supported by Ubuntu, and they're using 0.6. I would fairly strongly argue that we should go with, we're only talking about the current LTS and not all supported LTSs, because that's just too far.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Are folks okay with that?
But by the time the new LTS comes out, you can probably have changed your portable decision to be a particular previous year or something, I think, right, as well. So there's that's within the bounds of the proposal as it exists today. That's really the only slider that you get, I think.
Yeah.
Picking a specific year as a static target instead of the rolling one.
Yeah. All right, cool. Do you folks want to, any comments or questions about the other topics that were raised on the mailing list or other aspects of this?
I have one addition. I have heard that Canonical, the vendor of Ubuntu, is working on an installer that will include ZFS. Has anybody news on that? Because I guess the portability flag will likely be, like, I'm thinking about the portability feature from an how would I write an installer perspective.
I know Richard Lager is working with Canonical for some of those future releases of Ubuntu, making that happen. A good reason for it to be actually a tier 1 supported thing, so a little more evidence that way. But yeah, I don't have any more information than that. Another thing I just want to mention, though, also is that there are HWE hardware update kernels that go into the LTS. Usually that they start at the 0.2. And it is possible for even newer versions of the ZOL kernel module to be in those. Yeah, I don't think it's at that point yet, but that could be another complexity of what is the newest LTS. It all depends on if it's that 0.2, 0.3 release of the LTS also, or the 0.0 release.
So I'll go back to the question about boot pools. I think that a typical or a common use case of portable pools is, I'm going to plug this shelf in over here. I used to run FreeBSD, and now I'm going to try Linux for the shelf. I feel like a boot pool with an OS on it is less likely to be portable to something else. Like, you're not going to boot another OS because there's already an OS there. And, if I poach my FreeBSD 11.2 desktop and want to recover stuff off of the ZFS pool, I'm probably just going to boot a FreeBSD 11.2 installer and muck around with it there. And so I certainly think there is value to having portable boot pools, but I think it's of lesser value than getting the data pool portability correct first, and then tackling the boot pool question.
That makes sense to me.
I think the boot pool thing really feels like something distributions are going to have to be involved with.
It's a non-portable thing to begin with.
Right. It depends on the bootloader you ship, right, basically.
Yeah.
And your process for keeping the bootloader up to date as you keep the kernel up to date and so on.
Yeah. It's been my experience on the little Linux side, too, at least, that most distros are very reluctant to update their bootloaders. So they don't see a lot of updates.
I mean, it's pretty thankless. They only break.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's working, don't touch it.
Cool. Any other discussion on this? On pool features? So the last item of discussion on pool features is, thank you, Josh, for leading this discussion, putting together the proposals and summarizing everything. would anyone like to volunteer to lead the implementation of this? All right. We will raise this at a future meeting.
We're going to need to, I think that is a thing to discuss on the mailing list, or at least get some volunteers to discuss it, because one of the things is just deciding internally how it is going to be represented.
Yeah, I think that internal representation, like I would be fine with leaving that to whoever decides to implement it. Like if they want input, that's fine. If not, they can implement it, and then we can hash it out in code review. I think having this, like having the kind of specification of what it is supposed to do is super helpful in terms of guiding the implementation and making sure that we don't implement stuff that turns out to not be what folks want. All right.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly help out with determining what features are in Illumos for any particular date. I mean, that's
cool.
That's definitely, we can help with that.
We still have some time. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which was Christian. You wanted to discuss GUIDs for file systems for use with send receive, and I see that you added a bunch of notes around that in the under the backlog section of the agenda doc, in case anybody wants to follow along there.
Yep, so that's mostly speaker notes for me because I'm not a native speaker. So as some of you may know, I am working on a ZFS replication tool, and as such, I have to deal with file system identity across different pools. So basically figuring out, like, when I have my user home on machine A and I replicate it to machine B, then I have to somehow match these different file systems which represent the same thing at different states of replication. So in the course of this, I discovered that there is actually the GID property, which I put a PR up to make public, and it is now public and I think quite widely supported. And I already use it to basically figure out the diff between two different file systems, because GIDs are invariant across replication. So when a snapshot is replicated, it has the same GID on the target system. The problem is that this does not apply for the file system itself. So like a zeroed user home will have a different GUID on the receiving file, receiving pool, even though it is the same thing, like it was received with the ZFS receive command. And this is a problem because when users start to rename file systems on the source side, I want to be able to like still figure out which file system on the receiving side it is. So I need some kind of identifier for that. Right now, I just don't do it. I rely on the file system name, but that is kind of terrible thing to do. And I'm looking for ideas. And so my idea was basically to assign a GUID to the file system on the sending side and then replicate that GUID through like a property or out of band channel or something to the receiving side and store it there and use that to figure out the diff. And I was thinking this is not just useful for my case, but maybe also for others, and yeah, ideas or opinions whether this is useful in ZFS in general.
So ZFS send in the replication package mode, the -R mode, can, I think, handle renamed things today. How does it do that? Is that because the property of the snapshot GUIDs you mentioned are replicated? Is that how it's able to do that, or?
I am not aware of how the -R replication works inside, because I think it's mostly a user space thing, like the individual replication. Matt has probably.
It looks like Matt might know.
I am aware of how it works. I implemented that.
Very well. Thank you for asking.
Back in the day. Yes, more well than I would like to. Yeah, so the way that works, it is all in user land, but it does work. And the way that it works is, so you have when you do the send, you have the from GUID. So you know, like, I'm sending this stream, and it's from this GUID to this new GUID. And you're right that there isn't necessarily an easy way to know the name of the file system on the target if there have been renames, but if you like exhaustively search, you can find which snapshot has that same GUID as the from GUID. So basically you're like looking at all of the file systems, and you're kind of hoping to find one whose most recent snapshot is the one with the same GUID as the from GUID that the like individual send stream is describing. There are weird, like you can receive the same file system, the same snapshot multiple times in one pool, in which case like you can have two that have the same. I imagine you'd have that same problem with kind of what Chris is proposing. Like, you know, when you do, if we had this like DSL dir GUID, then like when you receive it, you would set it to be the same as it is on the source. So, you know, you could receive it multiple times and have multiple that are the same. So I think that the problem is solvable with the data that's available today, using the same mechanism as the send-R thing. It's not necessarily super efficient, but I think it would work.
I think the exhaustive search is a nice trick, but I think it is ambiguous with regards to identifying the root source of the conflict. So I think if you do the exhaustive search approach, you cannot distinguish whether things have fully diverged, like whether there has been an initial replication and then things diverged because people deleted snapshots randomly. And so there is no longer a common ancestor or something we could use to replicate, versus there has never been a replication.
So you're talking about the case where like you're doing with the send-R, if you don't have the target, if you did the replication once and then you deleted the snapshots and then you do the incremental replication, it's just going to say like, hey, like you don't have that file system anymore because you deleted one of the snapshots. You deleted the critical snapshot, and so too bad. But I think you are asking about like, I think your replication thing, it has like bidirectional communication. So presumably like you could figure out like, oh, this file system is actually the same as that one, and we have this old snapshot in common, and so I'm going to like incremental from there. Or even like we have no snapshots in common, but it's the same file system, and so like I'm going to, I don't know, delete that one locally and then re-replicate everything. Is that sort of what you're thinking, Christian?
Yeah, right now we're producing like pretty warnings and steps to make the user resolve the conflict, but in the future there might be automatic conflict resolution mechanisms. And for this, I want reliable conflict detection.
Are GUIDs not unique today necessarily in the pool?
The question is, are the dataset GUIDs unique?
Right, like if I receive the same snapshot twice, but they're invariant, then I'll have two snapshots with the same GUID.
That's correct.
Is that a problem? I guess that's not really a primary key, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been a problem with what we've wanted to do with send and receive so far.
Okay.
At least in the core ZFS, you know.
So if we were to make them at least potentially invariant for file systems as well, across replication, and you were to receive the same file system twice, you would still potentially
have that same ambiguity.
Right, but it wouldn't stop the system from working because they'd have different dataset names.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Matt, is it guaranteed that there are no collisions of GIDs within a dataset? Like for the different snapshots of a dataset, I think ZFS should assert that the GIDs do not collide. Does it?
I don't know that we make that assertion, but I believe that is correct.
It seems like that would be expensive to assert if there were 70,000 snapshots.
Yeah.
Oh, right. It cannot assert that. It would have to remember every single snapshot that was ever made of the file system. It cannot assert that.
Right. That's true.
But I think that the design, I mean, the design does enforce that that constraint.
Okay, so I see there is no clear conclusion on this. Of course, it's only a feature idea. I do not have the resources to implement that in my spare time. So I guess I would go with the user space approach and just add a user property.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of address, we've been talking about kind of how to solve the problem in general. I think that the GUID property that you're proposing for that would kind of be sticky with the DSL dir. I mean, I think that would be fine. Like I don't have any problem with implementing that or with somebody implementing that. And it seems like it might be useful in these cases. I think you can probably get most of what you want from the existing data set, snapshot GUIDs, and or adding your user property. But I'd be open to it. Like,
would you be able to
do that?
If you made a mistake, would you be able to change the GUID for a file system if you needed to?
What do you mean by mistake?
Well, like if you accidentally ended up with duplicates and duplicates were not helpful for a conflict resolution algorithm, like, you did some sequence of send and receive that you ended up with 5 file systems with the same GUID. Would you be able to change it without, like, not for a snapshot, but at least for a file system? Or?
We would. I mean, since nothing relies on this GUID,
Right.
So like, obviously we could change it. We could write some code that changes it. But we would probably want to think hard about like what guarantees we're trying to make with the GUID and if it would be helpful to allow that to change or not. I would imagine it would probably be like fine. I mean, it might be like, oh, if you do this, then your replication might get confused or whatever. But I don't think that I doubt that it would be able to break any sort of assumptions inside of ZFS. I think that's probably even true for snapshot GUIDs.
Yeah, like why was it there in the first place if nobody uses it? Like,
why was what there?
Why was it added in the first place if nobody is using the GUID? That I don't really understand.
What do you mean? People are using the GUID.
Okay, but nothing inside ZFS uses it.
Yeah, like send and receive uses it.
For the file system, though, you're saying. Basically.
Oh, are you saying for the file system as opposed to for snapshots?
Yeah, is it just a side effect of like general data set property and?
I'd have to go look at the code, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was a side effect. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
thanks for your attention.
The DSGUID, who uses that? Is it ever used on non-file systems? Sorry, is it ever used on non-snapshots? But it wouldn't surprise me if that was just kind of it just happened that way and nothing really cares.
So can I have a related question to the replication? Because I also was considering using GUIDs, especially to deal with file system renames. But what also helped me with replication is to be able to exclude some file systems if I use -R. So I have some temporary file system or stuff basically that I don't need to replicate. So the only thing I would need to do is to replicate the whole pool, but just exclude some selected file system, but still be able to replicate the dataset names and their properties, just not the content of the given file system. Would that be doable? Or so, for example, if I replicate,
I was with you until you said
it got a lot more complicated in the last sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what I would like to do is, if I recover my pool, for example, my /tmp file system is there, but it's just empty. And all the properties, if I have compression turned on and stuff like that, it's all there. So I don't have to create a file system. So I would like to replicate like empty file system, just not the content. But that's option. That's an option, let's say. But
I mean, I'm sure that you could hack that up. And I think that kind of ignoring the part of like sending the metadata but not the data. I think I'm pretty sure that was implemented by somebody somewhere. I think we might have done that like at Sun for Fishworks for some reason, where you could like exclude
Pruning a tree from the package,
you
basically.
could prune the tree based on the file system names or something.
Yeah, that was actually done. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if that code ever saw the light of day, but I remember doing that.
There is actually a hack I was able to come up with. Maybe it will be useful for somebody, but if you snapshot an empty file system or create 2 snapshots on empty file system and then just rename those snapshots, you can actually, they will be replicated. I was surprised that it actually works, but it does. So
yeah, I mean, I would be open to somebody adding that functionality. Either the like exclude these sub file systems entirely, or maybe exclude their data but not their metadata, and then have the target like. I assume the reason that you want to include the metadata is so that when you do the receive, the receive will like change the properties on the target to reflect what they are on the source.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So I don't have to remember or store somewhere else what file systems I had that had just that I didn't replicate it. I just want to recreate my whole pool and just have the file system with all the temporary objects empty.
So you want the receive to actually create an empty file system,
yeah,
and then set the properties.
Correct.
Would it create all the snapshots, but empty?
I don't really need the empty snapshots, but
to do a replication package, you've got at least 2 snapshots, right?
Yeah. It's getting a little crazy.
This is basically just asking for the send and receive filtering that I thought had already been an ongoing project. It's just that he wants to include the contents of the file system in the regex, not just the data sets.
Yeah, can you use redacted send and receive for this?
Actually, that's a great point. I bet that you could get exactly what you want with redacted send and receive.
You just redact the contents of that file system, right?
Yeah, like you just create a clone, rm-rf everything in the clone, and then say like, I want it redacted with respect to the empty clone, and then on the target, it won't send any data. You'll have that file system. You won't be able to do anything with the file system, but then you could do like create a new empty file system and then do a full send of that, and then use that to blow away the contents that are in the redacted one.
Okay.
Yeah, that actually might work. Well, it might be a nice trick.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So as predicted, we've come to the end of the meeting time. We still have one agenda item, so which is the enable compression by default. I think that's probably a more than 6-minute discussion. So let's move that to next meeting. Any final thoughts or comments for today? Oh, how about meeting time? I think that we had talked about doing like 2 meetings at this time and then one at the earlier time, kind of alternating on a pattern of 3.
Yeah, so next week would be, or next month would be the 11
o'clock. So which is 2 hours earlier than this one starts.
People good with that?
Any objections to that?
11 is fine for me.
I can live with it.
And that'll be on April 23rd. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll post the notes and the video probably later today or tomorrow.